the largest public housing in New York City, Queensbridge, and some of the richest neighborhoods in like the Upper East Side. But when you walked into both of those communities, girls were not learning how to code. Girls were not getting access to technology. And I had my father's voice in my ear, which is like, those jobs pay $120,000 a year. Like a girl like me could like march up into the middle class. And so I wanted to do that.
Today, we are joined by a very, very special guest, Reshma Saujani. Reshma Saujani is a trailblazing changemaker and founder of GirlsWhoCode and MomsFirst. She has spent more than a decade building movements to fight for women and girls' economic empowerment, working to close the gender gap in the tech sector, and most recently advocating for policies to support moms impacted by the pandemic. But we're just getting started, folks. Reshma is also the author of the international bestseller Brave Not Perfect and Pay Up: The Future of Women in Work and Why It's Different Than You Think. And her influential TED Talk, Teach Girls Bravery, Not Perfection, has more than 5 million views globally. Reshma is the founder and CEO of GirlsWhoCode, which has taught over 500,000 girls computer science education programming, and in 2019 was awarded Most Innovative Nonprofit by Fast Company. Reshma is a graduate of the University of Illinois, Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and Yale Law School. Her innovative approach to movement building has earned her broad recognition on lists including Fortune World's Greatest Leaders, Fortune 40 Under 40, Wall Street Journal Magazine Innovator of the Year, Forbes' Most Powerful Women Changing the World, and Fast Company's 100 Most Creative People, among others. Oh my gosh, I feel like I burned 100 calories just reading that bio. Reshma, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. I'm so excited to have you here today for so many different reasons. You're an expert on subject matter that is so pertinent and top of mind right now. You've lived this multifaceted career being a business owner and a lawyer and getting involved in politics. I am just so excited to be talking to you. But before we move forward, I do have a preliminary question for you.
All right.
I ask everybody this question, and it is, do you know what you're doing?
No. I think I'm getting closer to knowing. Look, I feel like I've always known what I feel like I'm put on this earth to do, right? How I'm doing it all the time, like, no.
Yeah.
No. And I think that's part of the journey. Yeah.
Okay, so we like to get into a little rapid fire round here, where I'm just going to get to know Reshma as a person, a little bit about your very interesting background. So first question is, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Chicago, like a suburb of Chicago, Illinois, called Schaumburg, Illinois.
Okay, cool. So you're a winter girly. You know how to winter.
Yes, I do.
What did your parents do for a living growing up?
Both my parents came here as refugees. My mother sold cosmetics. My father was a machinist in a plant, and they had studied engineering. They eventually got engineering jobs.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Did you go to college? And if so, what did you study?
I did go to college. I studied poli-sci in speech communications at the University of Illinois, Urbana.
Okay, great. And then you went on to more colleges.
I went on to more and more and more colleges.
You had a long academic career. And then what was your first job ever?
Dog walking. Mm-hmm. I was obsessed with having a dog. My mother would not buy me one.
No.
I know. Indian families have this thing about dogs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. It's like cultural. It's like they're like they think dogs are dirty. They don't want them in their house, like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? We're the people who like you take your shoes off when you walk into our homes. So like having a dog is like, yeah. So she would never get me one. And so then I got a dog. I got a job at a dog store just so I could be close to them. I'm like an animal lover.
Yeah, me too. Oh, I know. It's funny. When I was in high school, I was looking for a job and I went to Trader Joe's, but it was like, minimum wage for like all these shifts. And I was like, why don't I just walk dogs? It pays like a few dollars more and it's way more fun. I currently have, my dog is my background on my iPad, actually.
Mine's on my phone.
Little mutt. But I'm sorry to hear about the loss of your beautiful, beautiful dog. I would say dogs give an infinite amount of love in a finite amount of time.
Yeah. My husband loved to say that, what does dog spell backwards? God. It's so true. It's such a gift. They are a gift to you.
Unconditional love.
Unconditional.
All right. And if we keep talking about it, we're just going to start crying. Okay, moving on. And what would you define as your current job?
Well, I mean, currently I'm the CEO and founder of MomsFirst, but I just, I'm an activist.
Yeah, that's just how you define yourself,
yeah.
Broadly. Broad strokes. You're an activist in every aspect of your life. I love that. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of your background because it's truly a fascinating and inspiring story. So you grew up the daughter of refugees, but tell us a little bit more about your parents' background and how they were refugees. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, so they, what people don't know is like when you go to Africa, there's like a ton of Indian people there. right? Gandhi got so much of his kind of life's work and his, getting to the kind of nonviolence movement, he learned being in Africa. So my family, 2 generations of my family were born in Uganda, and they were brought over from the British, right, who obviously ruined everything in terms of imperialism. But they were brought over by the British.
Like to be paid or as slaves?
They were brought over by the British to build the railroads there. So they were like cheap labor
on the brink.
Right, on the brink, that were brought over. And so that's how my parents ended up in Uganda. And essentially in 1973, there was this crazy dictator called Idi Amin who came to power. And he had a dream that he needed to vanish all the Indians from, Uganda.
Give them a break, guys.
Yes.
They're brought over by the British.
Right, exactly. The whole thing. And so then they had 90 days to leave the country or they'd be shot on spot.
Oh my goodness. Your parents went through that terror. But they were Indian, but they were born and raised in Uganda?
They were born and raised in Uganda, both of them. They speak like fluent Swahili. So like when I go to India, I'm a tourist. We don't have any family there.
That's fascinating. So you grew up the daughter of refugees and immigrants, and they've gone through their own unique experience. You were born in America, though, right?
Yep.
You were born outside of Chicago. When you're going through high school, you talk about how you were bullied.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of representation for you. So is that what really sparked your advocacy at a young age, like wanting justice?
Yeah, I think also like just, when you grow up, my parents came here right in their early 20s. My mother was pregnant with my sister. My sister was born here. I was born here. But like when they came to this country, you've just had this trauma, right, of leaving your home. Most of my parents both had, big families, lots of brothers and sisters. Everybody was dispersed. Most of them ended up in refugee camps in England, right? So you're torn from your family. They had an arranged marriage.
Oh, really?
So they had just kind of like,
are they still married?
They're still married.
Cute.
And so, here they are, these 2 people, don't speak the language, don't have any friends, don't know, are in United States of America. And so, that was really rough for them. And I think appreciating that and their story and their struggle of like, if you are just like ripped from your home and your family, like, what does that mean? So I always recognized at a young age that like, oh shit, like they needed to vote. They needed to have control of their lives, their destinies, their identity, and that the political process is a really important way for you to do that. And then growing up as like a brown girl in a white working class neighborhood and hating my name, hating the color of my skin, hating the fact that I had to like repronounce my name all the freaking time,
oh my gosh, yeah.
Hating the fact that like I wasn't wearing the coolest kicks and the coolest clothes and my hair didn't feather the way that the other girls' hair feathered. And all of that was I had this kind of got bullied at school, had a schoolyard fight that like kind of changed the rest of my life. One, it made me realize that like I had to be okay with who I was and love who I was. And 2, that, that there were people who just because of the way I looked or what, my skin color was or what God I prayed to was not going to accept me. And maybe my life's work was in changing that.
Yeah, you got into a fight in your school?
Well, I wouldn't say I got into a fight. I would say I got the shit kicked out of me. Was probably a better way of saying it.
Really?
Yeah.
How old were you?
It was the last day of 7th grade. It was the last day of 8th grade. So I was going into my 8th grade graduation was like 2 days from there.
Oh my gosh. And this
Middle
girl
school.
just like challenged you or?
Called me Haji, challenged me to a fight. I was like, for some reason, instead of getting on the bus that day, I was like, okay, I'll meet you there. Show up, in the schoolyard, last day of school. So everybody's like, there's like confetti and, shaving cream and just boom.
Everyone's celebrating.
Everyone's celebrating. And it was the funnest thing for them, right? This like 2 girls in a fight.
Cat fight.
Cat fight.
Where's that girl now?
I don't know.
Let's look her up on Facebook.
Funny you say that because my sister also got bullied at school and she was telling me a story about how one of the girls reached out to her and apologized. And I kind of still sometimes wait for that Facebook notice, right? Of just
clock's ticking. If you're watching this,
yeah, maybe or like where they ended up or where she ended up.
Interesting. That's fascinating. Okay, well, you get through the fight. You get to high school, and it's getting time to apply to college. How are you approaching that?
So I always wanted to go to the University of Michigan. So where I grew up, nobody went to Harvard or Yale. Like everybody went to U of I, UIUC, community college. I, for some reason, wanted to go to the University of Michigan, like thought, and that was my dream school every day. Back then, like when you got college, your notices, it came to the mailbox.
No.
She'd run, you didn't know when they were coming. It wasn't like that one, right now it's like there's one day everybody gets on the computer and they see like what they got into or didn't get into. There it's just like you're going through hell all the time because you're just waiting for the mail. And, I got my notice, I got my letter of acceptance, and I was just ecstatic. I grew up in, where I was just, I was one of those kids who I was just trying to get out of my neighborhood. Everything always felt too small for me. And the big thing to me, big town was not New York City. It was like Michigan, Ann Arbor, Michigan. I get in, but of course it is so damn expensive even then because it's like a state school and I'm out of state tuition. And my father was just like, no. You can't go. I can't afford it.
I can't afford it. Oh,
and
crushing.
It was crushing because it was the only thing I wanted.
Yeah. And loans wasn't an option?
It was an option, but I remember I went to the bank and like you had to have a cosigner and he was just not going to do it.
Oh, okay.
For that, and look, his point was I had gotten into U of I. I'd gotten a bunch of I basically went to University of Illinois for free. He was in retrospect, maybe he was right because I was going to go get an excellent education, at U of I for free. And in his mind, what was the difference, right? Why would you pay $30,000 to go to University of Michigan, Urbana when you can go to this great, also state school that's like 5 hours away and pay nothing?
Yeah. And then let's talk about, you wanted to go to Harvard, Yale, and
I wanted to go to Yale. So the reason why I wanted to go to Michigan is I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, in my teens, and I wanted to go to Yale Law School.
Okay. That was like the dream.
The dream. Yeah. I mean, I had like U.S. News and World Report on my refrigerator, like from the time I was in 9th or 10th grade.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So did you apply to Yale when you were in high school then?
I didn't think that was an option.
Yeah. It just wasn't even an option. That's like me. I was like, it
wasn't even an option. I never applied. Yeah.
So you get to the end of your bachelor's degree and you start applying to law school?
I started applying to law school.
Yeah. How'd that go?
Not great. I was not a great test taker.
Me neither.
I just could not. Great grades, first in my class. Graduated. Essentially with a 4. I had 3.99 because I got a B in my chemistry class. Still try. That
was my worst grade too. Chemistry.
Chemistry was just like. But I had, I was a leader. I had perfect everything. Right, I'm working for it. Could not get those LSATs where they needed to be.
Okay, got it. So
I get rejected.
You get rejected.
I get rejected.
And then you eventually
but I get into some other school. I get into good schools. I think I got into like Northwestern or Michigan. I get into some other schools, but I don't want to go.
You don't want to go there?
I want to go to Yale.
Your sights are set.
My sights are set.
Okay.
And so on a lark, I apply to Harvard Kennedy School of Government. I'm also a political junkie.
Okay.
So, I'm growing up during, you probably don't remember, it's like Contract with America, Newt Gingrich. It was all of this, like, there's all this racism happening on my campus. Like, there's like fire. It's like 1992. There's like all this stuff happening in apartheid. Like, there's just all this stuff happening in the world. And I am like protesting on campus. I'm like on the quad. I'm doing the same thing I'm doing now, right? Except much younger then. And I am working on campaigns. And so I hear about this school of government at Harvard and I apply and I get in.
So you put the law degree dream on hold in order to go to Harvard.
Yes. Business. Well, and my parents are pissed about it. They cut me off. They don't talk to me.
What?
Oh, it's the whole thing.
So they were like, you should be a lawyer.
They were like, you should. Like, look, growing up in an Indian family, you could be a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer. They were like, politics, what? Government school? Well, I don't care if it's Harvard. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're off path. Like, you're derailing
Even though
yourself.
It's Harvard.
Did not care.
Didn't care.
Did not care.
So you do it anyway, though.
Do it anyway. I live on a friend's couch, get my Perkins loans, and I do it anyway.
You do it anyway. And so tell me about that. Nearing the end of that degree.
I mean, it was an extraordinary experience. I was probably one of the youngest people in my class. And at the Kennedy School it was all these activists and organizers from all these other countries coming there. And like, they were all they have this thing called the IOP. And there was all these amazing speakers that would come and speak, Benazir Bhutto, John F. Kennedy Jr. Like, it was just, my mind was on fire. It was just extraordinary.
So you were amped up to probably at that point in your life be involved in politics.
Yeah, I wanted to be in politics. I took the last summer I was there. I went, my last research project was it was soon after apartheid ended and the ANC was building its government. I went to go live in South Africa by myself.
Wow.
I'd never lived anywhere else before.
Talk about how impactful that is.
It was extraordinary. It was extraordinary.
Living alone, traveling alone, so impactful. But then you do end up going to law school.
But then I do. So then I applied to law school again, Yale again, a couple times there, got rejected. But my third rejection, I always tell a story, like one of my mentors at the Kennedy School of Government was this guy, Leon Higginbotham Jr. He was incredible. He was one of our civil rights leaders of our time. He was the first one of the first federal black jurists. And he was like, I'll get you in. Like, I got you. I got you.
Yeah.
And right before he's supposed to write my recommendation letter, he dies. And like, I'm devastated because I'm like Sunday, like every Sunday morning we would be at Leon's house and we'd be sitting with all these like leaders just listening to their stories. So he's like my mentor and he passes. And also like, I didn't get the recommendation letter.
Yeah. It's like you're grieving him and then you're grieving your career and you're like, this is all terrible.
So at the funeral though, I meet the dean and I meet the dean's assistant.
Okay.
And so I score a meeting with the dean, right? So
Leon still came through for you.
Leon came through. So I take a train, get to Yale Law School, meet with at that time Dean Crumman, tell him my sob story, thinking he's going to just and he's like, all right, I'll make you a deal. Not letting you in this year. But if you go to any of the law schools that you've gotten into, and I had gotten into some Michigan, Georgetown, Northwestern, go to any of them and get into the top 10% of your class, and I'll let you transfer to Yale. And so I was like, done. Great. Go to Georgetown. Don't have a single friend. Study my freaking ass off. Don't literally do nothing for 1 year except go to class, study, come home. Go to class, study, come home. Go to class. And it pretty much like at the first top of my class and then transfer to Yale.
So, but you're in DC and Georgetown.
I'm in DC and Georgetown.
So are you like being a little teased by seeing all the political stuff going on? You're like, is going this law route, should I just go right into the political activism, You know,
it's funny. That never occurred to me that I should have done that. And I think part of it is like, no one ever said to me, because I just didn't have people in my life that are in politics. Here, my parents are immigrants. No one I knew went into that field. No one had said to me, Reshma, if you really want to serve, go to Northwestern, go to U of I, stay in your community, run for office, right? Because that's always the easiest way to do it. In my mind, I think I always felt like, because I didn't go to and I went to public school my whole life and I had all these big dreams that I needed to credentialize myself. I needed that Yale or Harvard degree so someone would say, you're smart, you're good enough.
There's a feather in your cap, yeah.
Right, or it's just, all these powerful people seem to go there. And I thought that that's what I needed to do. And so I kept, and I think I was really, I'm like that. I don't know how you are. I'm stubborn. Like when I get something in my head, I don't like to fail. I don't like, so I kept, and I put so much of my life on hold.
Well, I was going to ask you about rejection. So I have a lot of people, DM me and they're like, Erin, I just keep getting rejected from jobs or colleges or whatever it is. And do you have any tips on rejection? And I'm like, honestly, it depends on the person. Because I'm stubborn. So if somebody tells me no, I'm like, I double down on my efforts to get into Yale or do whatever you did. What is your advice then for people?
I don't know. See, I go back and forth. Like, so I think that I think back in the day, like that was a dangerous gamble because I had actually put so much of my life on hold.
Yeah.
Not only that, like when I graduated Georgetown, I could have, so I do get into Yale, but I'm now behind. What I mean by that is I don't have the same relationships with professors. I got to make new friends. And I'm not, and I'm now like, my dad used to always say, like, do you want to be a small fish in a big pond or a big fish in a small pond? Right. And I actually sometimes used to do better when I was the smartest of the lot.
Yeah.
But when I got to Yale, like I was intimidated.
You're a minnow in the ocean.
Yeah. I mean, these are kids that have gone to the best private schools. Their parents are super wealthy. The Hamptons or they summered in Martha's Vineyard.
And you're like, what's a visa?
Well, correct. I had so much what I would call that imposter syndrome. I don't use that word anymore. Yeah. But like I was just, it didn't open up the same opportunities for me had I just stayed at Georgetown
or gone to imposter syndrome anymore?
I just think it's a farce.
Tell us about
It's
that.
a lie. I mean, I did a big speech
I watched your convention speech and you said you weren't going to talk about it anymore, but now we need you to talk about it.
Oh my God. So I think that there are a lot of terms we have out there that are intentionally used to hold women back. And imposter syndrome is one of them. So when I go talk to a group of women, I'll say, how many of you have like not done something because of imposter syndrome? Every hand will be raised, right? So it's like, I didn't apply for that job. I didn't take that promotion. I didn't leave my relationship. I didn't do something I knew I wanted to do because I had imposter syndrome. And we talk about imposter syndrome like it's like a medical term, like that it's inevitable or it's biological, right? And the term imposter syndrome came out in the 1970s. And, in the 1970s was a big accelerator for women's progress. It's when Roe v. Wade was decided, and we once used to have control over our reproductive rights, right? It's when Title IX was decided, women could now play sports. And so you had huge, massive influx of like women going into the labor market and quite frankly, like competing with the guys.
Yeah.
And at that same time, this term imposter syndrome comes out.
Bubbles up. Yeah.
Yes. And it's so fascinating if you look at moments of progress where you'll see this happen. The story that I tell in my Smith commencement speech was about bicycle face. At the time of the suffragist movement in the 1920s, right, you were just starting to see these women who were starting to basically fight for their right to vote. And at the same time, the bicycle came out. And when the bicycle was first invented, it was like this big wheel in the front and this tiny wheel in the back. And so what would happen, it was like topple over. And when the bicycle came out, so came this term, the bicycle face. And it was a term to describe like having a flushed face, like looking unattractive.
Okay.
And it was often used to describe women who rode bicycles. And the bicycle, similar to this moment, was a huge symbol of women's progress because now women, instead of waiting for a guy to come over on his horseback and give them a ride to the next protest, they could just bicycle there on their own.
Get a bike, yeah.
They would put their suffrage signs, to the front of their bicycle. They, instead of wearing these annoying long skirts, they started wearing bloomers, right? It was a symbol of women's progress. And right when that progress started happening, a term came out called bicycle face to turn women off of riding the bicycle. And it did. And so if you look at different moments of progress, we invent things, introduce things. And imposter syndrome, it's not real. Like I always say, like, if you're the only woman in a room and you're like, I don't know if I belong there, that's kind of normal. For me to sit in my Yale Law School class where everybody there was privileged and came from different experience, for me to feel like I'm scared to raise my hand, that's not imposter syndrome.
What would you call it then?
Just natural human reaction to
It's
feeling
interesting.
like you're not, you know what I mean? Like you don't belong.
It's interesting when we label things, it can both help and hurt because I think it can enable us to feel that even more, but also give you a label to say, oh, okay, I'm not alone in this. Everybody feels like this. Kind of the point of the show is to show that like everybody is making up as they go along and no one has a handbook for life.
Well, the other thing is like, I just feel like right now we're just in this really wild moment as women, right? Where it's just, we're kind of moving out of this girl boss stage into this stage where a lot has been taken away from us. So our reproductive rights were taken away from us, right? You're having this big assault against affirmative action and DEI with the imposition that like we as women have been given opportunities we don't freaking deserve, which is bullshit because no one's ever given anything to us. So it's this moment again where you had this progress and then you have this retrenchment from progress. And so in these moments, we have to pay attention to like the language and to what's happening. I do believe that when we got our reproductive rights taken from us, when we can't decide the fundamental decisions of our body, whether to have or to not have a child, we became second-class citizens. We became less respected, less valued, right? Less admired. And that happened where you saw a huge shift in women's leadership positions, both politically, both in Main Street, in Wall Street, everywhere you look. And you've also saw kind of a rise of kind of toxic masculinity and this kind of assault against women. You saw a huge push to like trad wives.
I was just going to ask, what do you think about that stay-at-home girlfriend is like a thing right
it's
now?
a whole thing.
And a lot of women, are saying on social media, I just want to work until I can find a husband so I can have kids and stay home. What do you think about this next wave of feminism?
It's all part of this conspiracy, I think, against robbing women of choice.
Wow. So you think it's part of a larger...
I do. I think it's a moment right now it's very connected to what happened with Roe v. Wade and our reproductive rights. It's very connected to, again, tight labor markets where women feel like it's hard to get a job. So maybe I should just find a man, right? And none of this is really about choice. It's about culture. I was spending some time with the brilliant Claudia Golden, who just won, who had won a Nobel Peace Prize.
If you don't know Claudia Golden, Google her right now.
Yeah. So I spent an hour and a half at having coffee with her at her house. Yeah. And I was going through some of her data. And, ever since the 1950s, one of the things that has been consistent to now is this perception that the best person to stay home with a child is a mother. So it's, again, this traditionalism in what we think a woman's role is in the home. And that keeps popping up in moments where there's progress you start seeing. So you saw that Phyllis Schlafly, right? Same kind of thing happened in the 70s when it was almost like so much progress with Roe v. Wade, Title VII, women entering the workforce. That then you see this traditionalism of no, women should be at home. And look, here's my position on this. You should have choice. You want to be at home? Awesome. You want to stay home and take care of your kids? Good for you. But have choice. Have choice in that decision. And that is what I think that has been missing in the feminist movement. And this ability, I always say, freedom is the ability to move in and out of the workforce with choice.
You just reminded me of something. The word feminism has obviously become so hot topic. Can you really quick, for anybody listening to this who's maybe leans more conservative, doesn't consider themselves a feminist, can you just define what feminism is?
I mean, feminism to me is just equality, equal opportunity.
Equal opportunity.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it. We don't like the word.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And I go back and forth with this. Maybe we're too attached to the word. Maybe we need to find something.
Need to rebrand it.
Maybe we need to rebrand it, right? Because maybe when I say feminism means equality, most people are like, oh, I didn't think that's what it meant for me. I think it meant anti-men.
Anti-men.
Yeah.
Yeah. Women with shoulder pads going to the office every day, neglecting their children.
Right.
So I'm curious. I grew up right outside of DC. So I grew up learning to be pretty jaded about politics and the government. But I went to American University in DC. So I had a lot of classmates who would come to DC and they were like, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to get involved in government. And I was like, go for it. But, growing up, my dad would always tell me, if you want to really change the world, create a company. So I want to talk to you because you both ran to be a political leader, to be in the government, and you have both created a company. Tell me about what running for politics and getting involved in politics taught you about the U.S. government and how to make changes.
Yeah. So I always believed that the way to make change was to serve your country. And I think part of that was my parents being refugees, coming here, this country saving their life, that I felt like I owed a debt. That was the way for me to repay with service to my country. So politics was always just, for me, the way I thought I would do that. I also think that each of us are given a gift by God. And I've always had the gift of my voice and my ability to communicate ever since I was young, right?
Always been a leader and...
Well, I've always been a speaker.
Okay.
And I've always been able to give a good speech or communicate, or, my superpower is I can see a little far ahead of where the world is going and communicate that trend in a way.
Cool.
Right. And
cool
I see it and it's my voice. And so, and for me, and I also when I am on stage, I feel the most alive, the most present. I think that is a gift that has been given to me by a higher, by a higher. And so part of it is for me, I having that gift, how am I going to use that gift for good? Right. And I thought, well, the way I would use that gift for good is politics.
The biggest stage. Yeah.
The biggest stage. I then found myself at 33 in New York City. Now, New York City is the toughest town for politics. It is the hardest. I don't care how good you are. I don't care how good your speech is. I don't care. It is just hard. And I think the smarter you are, the more independent you are, the more you're going to speak your truth, the harder it is. Right? Because too many people are in the hands of politicians. I didn't understand all that. So at 33, there's potentially an open seat in my district. This woman, Carolyn Maloney, she's been there for 18 years. She's retiring. And
What district? Is it
it was Upper East Side, and then went all the way down to Manhattan. And I do believe that part of the problem is like the average age in Congress is 69. Like that has to change. It has to change. So like, and then I had been involved in politics since college, and people always be like, we need more young people to run. We need more young people to run. I was like, oh, dude, like
I'll run.
I'm running.
Yeah,
and so I thought everyone's going to be so excited. No. This was my first lesson of like the cost of not waiting in line and waiting your turn. The minute I decided to run in a Democratic, so like, AOC did this many years later. Now it's a thing. But when I did it in 2010, it was
people
not
weren't
a
doing
thing.
that.
And I didn't know any better, right? And so I decided to run against this incumbent, and like literally I can't hire, nobody in New York would hire, like I can't hire anybody. I am banned.
Like I won't touch you because that'll get me blacklisted.
Can't do your mail, can't help you. So then what happens is I end up getting this ragtag group of kids.
Love it.
Anybody who's like, yeah, disruption, outsider, showing up at my campaign office. And we build this like incredible campaign. But I'm not smart enough yet in terms of understanding the political system and the political machine. And, at that time, before I ran for office, I had $300,000 in student loan debt. And I'm working, as a lawyer in corporate America at a time, right, where it was all like Occupy Wall Street. It's like the worst place that you could come from. And so I get turned into kind of like this rich bitch running against, even though I got like $5,000 in my bank account, running against someone who is, and I just lose the narrative because I didn't know how to fight back.
And that's where you're like, oh, it's not a meritocracy. It's a PR thing. It's a money thing.
And I got squashed. I got squashed. And so, but still I'm like getting momentum. I'm raising money. And at that time, this is the other thing I would say to people is always pay attention to your generation of people of greatness. And so John Legend is a friend of ours because my husband went to school with him. He's like, I'll give you I'll do 2 concerts for you. Jack Dorsey is a friend of ours through, our crew. And like, he's like, was at that time getting kicked out of Twitter, right? So it's like, I had people of my peers who had a little bit of power, a little bit of voice that were going to put it towards what I was trying to do. And so it was this amazing, amazing, powerful experience. I lose. I mean, it's not even close.
It's just crazy, the power.
Yeah. And I'm like, now I'm broke. I'm humiliated. And I have a powerful enemy in Carolyn Maloney who was like, oh yeah, you're not getting a job doing nothing. And at this point, like, I'm like, had this, the 10 months of that campaign was like, it was soulful. Like I'm in the streets, I'm talking to people, I'm seeing the issues, I know what needs, you know what I mean?
You would be so good.
And so if you would just elect me, I could do such a good job. And so I'm like, okay, like you're not going to elect me, but I still want to serve. And that's how I come up with Girls Who Code, right? Which is like at that time in 2010, technology was just starting to pick up. And the district was really interesting because it was like the largest public housing in New York City, Queensbridge, and some of the richest neighborhoods in like the Upper East Side. But when you walked into both of those communities, girls were not learning how to code. Girls were not getting access to technology. And I had my father's voice in my ear, which is like, those jobs pay $120,000 a year. Like a girl like me could like march up into the middle class. And so I wanted to do that. And that's what really inspired me to start Girls Who Code, build that, few years later, run again for public advocate. This time I've learned my lessons from the past. Not letting anyone own my narrative, et cetera, et cetera. I'm running against Tish James, who's a badass.
Okay.
But I lose again. And this time I'm just like, I don't know what to say. Meaning like, they don't want to elect me, and you can't make somebody see you. And so I'm like, I gotta find another way to serve. Like I gotta find another way to do good. And that's really where, to me, now I would argue that I think social entrepreneurship is the new politics.
Tell me about that.
Because I think in both of my movements that I've built, Girls Who Code and now MomsFirst, I've taken really big issues, right? Like technology, education, coding, equity, right? And Girls Who Code taught more kids than any public school district, any city, any town, any country in the world, right? And did that.
And created ripple effects.
And created ripple effects throughout the globe. I mean, there's a Girls Who Code version everywhere, from Singapore to Afghanistan. It changed the understanding, right, of what's possible. And I did that as a failed candidate, strapping my baby to my back, begging for every $5,000 to help me build this movement. And I did it with a lot of failure, a lot of judgment, a lot of just, nobody gave me anything.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you hear that, y'all? No one gives us anything. You got to fight for it.
You don't need it. And you got to fight for it because you'll find your people.
Yeah, you
who
will
believe in you.
I love that. So, Girls Who Code. So are you out of politics now forever? Or
well, I mean, it's funny. Like? I guess so. I'm building Moms First, which I'm building the largest army of moms, in the country to fight for paid leave and fight for childcare.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about.
So I'm still always building base. Even Girls Who Code, like what I secretly was doing was building base of girls. You know what I mean? All across this country, who are going to own their own destinies.
Love that. And you've definitely done it. Like, you're killing on social media, and you've created this whole new generation of women who go out. Now we just need to make sure that when they get those coding jobs and they get to be 35 and they start to have kids, that they can continue to be in their power.
Exactly.
So let's talk about Moms First, a new organization. And on your website, it says, other countries have social nets, America has moms.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So like I built Moms First. For me, it was like the start of the pandemic. Girls Who Code just had a Super Bowl ad. Like it was the first time women were 51% of the labor force. Like I was flying my feminist flag high. I was finally having my second child after 10 years of fertility challenges. And I was just looking forward to just taking a beat. Getting to celebrate what I've built, getting to take time with my family. And Sai was born on January 25th, and, the world fell apart the first week of March.
2020?
Yeah.
Oh my
And so I found myself having to go back to work, take care of a newborn, homeschool my 5-year-old, and save my nonprofit from being shut down. People don't understand this. Girls Who Code and so many women's organizations were on the brink. So many of them shut down because when pandemics hit, the first resources to be pulled away are the ones that are going to women and girls organizations. And so I was working 16, 17 hours a day just to rebuild what I had already spent the past 9 years building, and then take care of my babies. And the thing that just like shifted my whole life was, that summer, at the end of that summer, so many of my students, half the girls we teach are under the poverty line, are Black and brown. And so many of them were on their way to major in computer science. But because their mothers were essential workers, our teachers, our nurses, right, keeping our streets open, instead of going to college, they had to stay home and take care of their siblings. And I saw for the first time how, because we live in a country that has a broken structure of care, how that creates a generational cycle of poverty, especially for girls of color. Yeah. And so I basically quit my CEO job at Girls Who Code, handed it over to my COO, who's now our CEO, is just freaking brilliant. That's another conversation about the need to always transition power, to give other people a chance, to never sit on your throne for too long. Right. And
bring it back around.
I know, thank you. And then built this other organization to fight for this.
That's amazing. So yeah, it brings up a huge topic that I talk about, giving career advice as an American and as an American woman who is married and will plan on having children in the future. Parental leave. We are the only industrialized nation that does not have a federal paid maternity leave or paternity leave policy. People spend a lot of time talking about that and complaining about that.
Yeah.
And we need to. That's how you make changes in America. You go out and create the change. I want to ask you, what do you envision a better future could look like? Like, how could we do it even better than all those other countries that are currently doing it? Like, what's a utopia future that you could picture where we both keep the American integrity of this country, where it is a country where you can become a millionaire within a lifetime and start your own company and be empowered, and there's good competition, and at the same time actually support families?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I don't think that they're at odds with each other. I think that like we have to create a space for women to move in and out of the workforce, you know what I mean, without penalty. We have to create space for men to do care work without gaslighting them, you know, for that, right? Like that means shifting kind of American culture about who's doing what, who's changing the diapers, who's buying the groceries,
What do you
who's
mean by
picking up.
gaslighting them? That's
Like, I think
interesting.
that like there are a lot of men who, most men I know want to be with their kids. They want to pick up their son from school. They want to, you know, cook dinner. It's not like they're sitting up with their feet on, drinking their, you know, drinking their coffee. And we're not living in 1950s Mad Men.
No, we're not.
We're not. But I know for a lot of men who are at work when they're about to have a child and they're taking paternity leave, they're made fun of. They're gaslit. Things are taken away from them. So it's like this culture has to shift where we actually are family oriented. We all believe that it's good for both parents to kind of when a baby is born, to be there for them, to take care of them, to set the family up right so that they can be productive. That doesn't exist in American culture in the same way.
It doesn't. It's, you know, profits over people. That's
Yeah.
kind of like where we're at right now. So I'm curious, what do you think? Do you think the government needs to step in? Like, do you think we need to have equal rights for both genders of parents?
I think you need I think you need culture change, like I talked about.
Okay.
So like I'll go culture change first. Like I said, we have to allow men to care, to give. And we have to like celebrate it. Like I joke, like I want like the next Super Bowl ad to be like LeBron James doing the laundry. Like it is aspirational.
Yeah. But you can get why men they don't want to seem emasculine, you know, or feminine. So how do we inch by inch?
I think you need to have like again, men who we think are, and I think it's happening with this younger generation. Like I think it's happening with your generation where it's like they can change that. Like it can move. I mean, it happened, quite frankly, you know, in Sweden in less than one generation, right? Where you just had a policy change where you mandated it and then people did it. I think the second thing is it's not really aspirational to be a mother. Also, like, you know, we love pregnant moms, but we don't love moms. It's like, and talk to any mom, they're shocked, right? Whether it's like not moving a seat when you're sitting on the subway, or it's like having to breastfeed in a closet, or having to put networking lunch when your kid is sick. Like you are not treated with respect. And there are some countries, a friend of mine in Colombia, she said, you're a queen if you're a mother. Imagine using the word queen and mother. It's just not synonymous and it's not aspirational. And so a lot of what I think we need to do, I mean, think about it even this way. If you think about like celebrities that you know, they're not leading with their motherhood. They're often talking about how when they became a mom, jobs got taken away. They couldn't land a job in Hollywood. Right. And so then you hide it, or you're ashamed of it, or you know, and so what is not aspired to is not respected. And so I think that culture, the way we treat about it culturally is tied to policy. The second thing is, yes, we've been trying to pass childcare and paid leave essentially, and we got real close with Nixon. You know, World War II, we kind of had the policies that we needed because the men were going off to war and we needed women at work. So they opened up daycare centers. We had paid leave, right? We shifted the way we thought about work, right? And then that changed. And, you know, you see remnants of this during the pandemic. During the pandemic, people were like, wait a minute, I am a mother and a worker. I need that flexibility. And so now, you know, Claudia, like as we were talking about this, like, you know, 35% essentially or more of workers have some amount of flexibility, or 40% have some amount of flexibility. It's becoming the norm. There's still pushback against it because we assume that if you have flexibility, it means you're not working, which is bullshit. Right. But it's changing. But there still isn't, you know, like the United States is the only industrialized nation that doesn't have paid leave. You know, we're the wealthiest nation that spends the least amount on childcare. 50% of parents live in childcare deserts. We're in New York City, 1 out of 4 New Yorkers lives in a childcare desert.
Wow.
Right. So like, and we know that people need childcare to work, but yet we have not fixed this problem.
Yeah. So what do you think that could look like? Like government subsidies, incentivizing corporate companies. I know that you guys just did a huge study with McKinsey on this. What do you think that could look like in practicality, where as we're both business owners, we aren't paying somebody for a year to not work?
Well, I personally, from a policy perspective, believe in universal childcare. I think childcare should be like K through 12 education.
Love it.
Right? It's there. It's in every school. It's in every library. It is just there. Right? So I think we got to work towards that, right? And I don't think everybody is ready for that yet. But, you know, what President Biden had, you know, proposed was like a 6%, like no family should pay more than 6%, you know what I mean, for their childcare. But that means we also have to have more childcare centers, which means we also have to pay childcare workers more than we actually pay them. But we have to be like, and I think, quite frankly, we need more innovators. Like the business model of childcare is broken.
It is.
And so we need to encourage more innovators. And there's great, Mirza, Vivi, Kara. I mean, there's more people that are entering this space that are thinking from an entrepreneur perspective of how do I disrupt the model of childcare? How do I think about it entirely differently? And so I'm excited to see that. And then on the business case of things, while we're waiting for Congress to kind of get its shit together and do something about childcare finally and paid leave, we need businesses to step up. A great example of how you can have real change in businesses is fertility benefits. 5 years ago, most companies did not offer fertility benefits. And what started happening is young women and young men started walking in their interviews saying, so how many egg freezings do you cover? And then that person would go to, CEO and be like, people are asking about this. We should do something. And you had a huge sea change happen in fertility benefits.
I have several friends who've frozen their eggs on their company's dime.
Exactly.
Insane.
And now it's almost expected, right? Same thing that needs to happen with childcare. Right now, about 12% of U.S. workers have childcare benefits from their employer. That needs to go to 50, 60, 70%. And so it has to be, we have to start treating childcare like we treat healthcare. Now, this is where I feel like you come into place. And Claudia actually mentioned this. So she was saying, one of the reasons why we have not passed this before is that young women are not demanding it. Because you're not even thinking about you might be at this one, but a lot of young women, they're not thinking about having a kid.
Well, like you said, we're shoving it.
Right. We're like, but you got to think about it like we think about fertility, which is you know what? One day I might. So I want to work for a company that's paying for my childcare, or I want my congressperson to commit that they're going to support childcare or paid leave. We got to bring it closer so you don't let people take the choice away from you. And that's what's happening right now. Birth rates are going down in this country because it's so expensive to have a child. And so we're stealing that choice away from you. Don't let them do that.
What's interesting too, gosh, I'm blinking on it right now. It's the Family Act.
Yeah, the FMLA.
Yeah. Oh, no. It's a new one by a senator. I'm completely blinking on her name right now. I'll put it somewhere. But anyway, she was proposing this kind of insurance thing where you would start paying in, when you get your first job, you're 21 or 22, and you're like, I'm going to have kids later on in my life. I'm going to pay into a private kind of insurance thing, and my company can match it. Therefore, when I do have to go on paid family leave, I can cash out.
Yeah.
And it's similar to us studying other countries' programs because, people will comment I live in Romania and I get paid for 2 years, stay at home with my kids. And I'm like, okay, how does that actually break down? Because Romania isn't a super wealthy country. So I was studying how they actually do this. And Canada, for example, they have EI insurance.
Yeah.
And they'll basically just get paid the money back that they paid into the system for years. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what kind of system do you think we could implement practically that maybe both sides of the aisle could agree to?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Look, I think part of what we have to solve for is it is expensive, right? And so Republicans don't want to raise taxes on the rich, or businesses. And then businesses get against it because they don't want their taxes to kind of go up. And then we just don't do it. And the other problem is we don't see other people's children as a societal good. Think about, Claudia was saying this, it's true. You live in, your grandparents might live in New York, and then eventually they move to Florida, right? And now they're not in the same community as they were before. And they're like, wait, why are my taxes paying for that school? So we have to, as a culture and a society, have to say, these are all our children. If
be actually a family first country.
Correct. Yeah. And so just like we pay for roads, just like we pay for schools, just like we pay for wars, right? Childcare has to be seen in many ways as necessary for a functioning society.
Yeah. But I guess what they say is, well, why pay for it when you could just have unpaid labor done by women? Women are already doing it for free. Why not just edge them out? And get back to that.
Yeah. Well, because I think part of that is what's the ROI on that? So one, there's a real cost when, you don't have, women are downshifting in their careers, and not working at their kind of highest level that they're capable of working at because they're doing childcare. The other thing is there's a tremendous amount of evidence that shows, I would argue that I am probably, my son is 4. My pre-K teacher is 1,000,000 times more competent than I am to be teaching Sci anything, right? And there's so much evidence that shows that those early years are critical to have a professional who is educated, has the skills to give them, the child, what they need for their brain to grow, right? And like, there's so much evidence that that investment leads to, lower crime, people live longer, right? There's so much societal upstream costs, right? I'm making that kind of investment that like, and so why do we have to keep proving that? There's for K through 12, the United States was one of the first the first nation to pay through K through 12 education. Everyone said, you're crazy.
I know.
Why would
people
you spend all
forget that? Like we did that.
We did that first and it was expensive.
Yeah.
But the reason why we crush it as a nation, that we lead on everything from in science and every single industry, that we are innovative and smart, and that, again, we have lower rates of poverty compared to other nations, lower unemployment rates because we made that investment.
Yeah. And
now there's a gap, right, between 0 to 6 that is like, again, leading to some of the societal issues that we have that we're failing to kind of close.
And it's hitting women right at the crux of their career, right when things get going. We're like, stay home. And, a lot of women want to. A lot of women say they want to. A lot of women have to. Also, it's a privilege to say that nowadays. Something I've noticed is a war being waged on social media. So I have 13 nieces and nephews.
Wow.
I have, 4 sisters-in-law, a sister. Nearly all of them have kids. So I have a lot of exposure to, and they're across, some of them have jobs, some of them don't. And so I see a really interesting, I had a stay-at-home mom. My husband's mother worked. So I'm right now just like studying. I'm like, this is fascinating to me. And one of the things that we were talking about, we actually had a girls' weekend this weekend. We're all together and we're talking about how on social media, what is this war being waged? Where some women are like, I want to raise my own children, so I stay home. And I'm like, okay, so women who go to work aren't raising their own kids? Like, why is there this defensiveness with women and you just don't see it with men?
Well, because this goes back to, this started in the 1970s with Phyllis Schlafly. Right? It's like the feminist movement excluded stay-at-home moms. And the language that we used, right, alienated them. So it felt like also what we were, giving people the right to vote, encouraging women to, work in the workforce, having the rights for your reproductive choices, that all disrupted, a patriarchy that for some women, they like. And we have to remember that, right? With no judgment. So now we have this opportunity, which we're failing at in this moment, to learn from the mistakes of the past and to make all of those moms feel like we're not judging you. If you want to stay home, stay home. That's why we say at Moms First, freedom is freedom for mothers is the ability to move in and out of the workforce without penalty.
Yep.
With choice. Right? And society should be set up to give people the choice. Because look, there are moms who are like, I want the first year and a half, I want to stay home. And you should be able to. But it shouldn't then be hard for you to re-enter. And it's so damn hard.
What is the dream? Like, what is the future? What is a way that we can better support women in America? Is it men having to take off those years too? Like, how are you how are you going to raise your sons?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think the dream first is like to throw in the trash all the shit that we've been told before. Part of the problem is, one, we have thought about women's progress and equality as a problem that women are broken and that we have to fix them. So much of what is out there in culture is like, get a mentor, get a sponsor, color code your calendar, get more confidence, do a power pose before you start a meeting. Like, get rid of your imposter syndrome, right? So all of the like the big lie, the big corporate lie has made women feel like they are broken, that there is something wrong with me. And we need to acknowledge that that is just a lie. And we have to not fall for it. And we have to throw it in the trash. And then we have to turn our attention towards the structural change, right? And to me, that is about paid leave, that is about childcare, that is about algorithms that spit out resumes when you have a gap. Like, we shouldn't have that. That is about workplace policies that have, promotions based on how long you've been there. Again, immediately penalize women who haven't. That means also like not having a backlash against productivity, giving people control over their time, right? And so as a movement, we have to keep our eye laser focused on the structural change, and then all the things that pop up that try to distract us from entering that fight. Like that to me is really important. The second piece is like, we gotta include our men. Like, 40% of Girls Who Code teachers are guys. 50% of my Girls Who Code board are men. I would say my 3 biggest checks at MomsFirst are men, right? Like, you want the same thing I want too. Right. And so like part of though is them engaging them in this fight. And it does, to me, the biggest change that we can make is in gender parity and unpaid labor. Right. My biggest problem as a mom is I just don't have time for myself. Like, I can't even have a midlife crisis if I wanted one. Right.
Yeah.
Like, I just need some time. I need some time.
I don't think you're alone.
Yeah. And so like, part of that is like, I joke, like my husband and I are in couples counseling because, I took paid leave and he did it. And we just have never been able to get the ratio right, And so like, that is work we have to do,
Absolutely.
But that's also work that has to be done culturally, right? Like if all the places and spaces that he is in are encouraging more caregiving work, like I say this with our sons, I have 2 boys, and like, you're not getting, extra Roblox until you clean up your toys and you make your bed and you get me a glass of water. You know what I mean? Like, it's embedded in what it means.
Absolutely. I'm curious with your husband, when you guys were dating, did you ask him questions before you got serious?
Oh Lord, he asked me to marry him 3 times before I said yes. I was very clear that like I wanted to be a mom and I wanted to crush at what I felt like I had been put on this earth to do. And I knew that was going to be hard. I had a sense.
Have to say they want both.
They just get both. And I knew that I had to marry the right person that was going to support me. And I certainly did. I mean, Nahal believes in me more than I believe in myself. He is always he's attentive to like, you're not getting enough sleep. You need to, like, if the world needs you, we need you. He is so proud of me. But does that mean that still doesn't mean that he doesn't sometimes fall into his traps? Because the problem is like, because he does more than his dad did, he thinks he's doing enough. And so but that's okay, right? To have that negotiation and that balance. And he's come such a long way, And I think is such a role model for his friends, right? On how to aspire to, 50-50.
Yeah, that 50-50. I think it's tough, I don't think I know any couples where it's 50-50. We were even just talking about this weekend how, like, we think like the mental load. We talk a lot about mental load, and like we think more about the dog needs to go out. We think more about the male, like, and men maybe just don't. I don't know. I've never been a guy. I'll never be a guy. I can't compare our 2 brains, but
I admire that. You see what I'm saying? Like, I think there are so many times that I'm trying to make so many people so happy. You know what I mean? And he just, there is something about, he kind of wakes up and he thinks about himself first. And the kids first, and then, but she's just saying like, I'm last on the list.
You're last, yeah.
Right? It's the kids, it's the dog, it's my coworkers, it's my friends, it's my parents, and then it's me.
Yeah, and MomsFirst is
absolutely
put them at the top of the list.
Absolutely, and like I was just having this conversation with and I've tried in the past 6 months to really start focused on. I always say like you can't fix other people's suffering unless you understand your own. Like if you don't spend those moments of time just working on you, on and whether that means like for me, like I've been doing sound baths lately because, after my dog died, I was really struggling with like the grief and being able to process the grief, in a way and with my big job and with my kids and with all the stuff. And I had never really learned as a leader, as an activist, how to put myself first.
Yeah. I love that for you. So yeah, how are you taking care of your mental health now?
Sleep is big. I got this little aura thing.
Me too. We have matching auras.
Yeah. And every morning I'm like, oop, not enough, right? And I'll like cancel things or move things, right? To get that 8 hours of sleep. I'm training for a half marathon.
No way. Which
Yes,
one?
the Brooklyn.
The Brooklyn. My husband did it last year.
Yeah, so
that's amazing.
So like working out is huge for me. Like I like implement that. And then I'm trying to journal, doing sound baths. I have a standing weekly with my monk, who's my guru, who I was studying the Bhagavad Gita, but that allows me to kind of, again, focus on the things that I need to kind of work on and heal. Yeah. And so like and listen, I'll be honest, like all that stuff takes time.
And your husband has to prioritize that too for you.
Yeah.
That's what I've noticed with my husband running marathons. I'm like, we're running a marathon.
Yes.
Yeah. I got to stay home when you go out and really have kids.
It takes so much time.
Yeah.
It takes so much time. But again, like, oftentimes he is like my self-care role model. Cool. Like sometimes you kind of need the men in life to be a little bit like, damn, like I need to do that too.
My husband's like that too. Yeah. I think maybe with women like us, you need a partner who's like eating healthy and
absolutely.
I'm like, oh, okay, I should probably be doing that. Well, that's amazing. Congrats on your half marathon. Well, I feel like I could talk to you all day. Really quick, is PaidLeave.ai something that?
Yes.
Can we talk about that real quick?
Yeah. So like, look, I obviously working in technology for so long, I'm always thinking about when AI came out, like, okay, what is its use for good? Everybody's talking about AI for good, but like, what does that really mean? And in our world right now at Moms First, right, we're trying to get paid leave passed. But so right now for paid leave, there are 10 states that offer it and 3 states that are about to offer it. But for the states to offer it, like New York, the uptake level is really small because government sucks at customer service, right? Like I've been trying to do my loan forgiveness stuff and it's so confusing. It's they make it so hard.
To do your taxes.
To do your taxes, to get SNAP benefits, to get Medicare, Medicaid, everything. They make it hard. If they owe you money, they make it hard to get it to you. And so I think, though, that was a great example, though, of how generative AI can actually help. And so I reached out to my friend, Sam Altman, and said, I got this idea to build a tool on paid leave with generative AI. He hooked me up with the team at OpenAI, and we built one of the first ever public sector tools using generative AI to solve a societal problem. And it was bananas when we launched it. 25,000 parents, used it. The response has been so powerful. The ability to use it in other use cases have been really tremendous. And so basically you go to PaidLeave.ai, and if you just found out you're having a baby, or you have a parent that you need to take care of, you can ask it a bunch of simple prompts. And when you leave, you'll know, am I eligible for paid leave? How much money do I get?
So cool.
And like, what's my action plan?
So anybody who's watching who, is planning on having kids soon or currently has kids can go to PaidLeave.ai and they can type in like, I live in the state of New York. This is my job. Am I eligible for paid leave?
Exactly.
So cool.
Yeah.
That's the first half. Now we all need to go vote in November.
Absolutely. It's a big election.
Policies that support paid leave. So do you know of policies on the table that we should keep an eye out for?
I mean, listen, I think we got to bring those policies to the forefront. Okay. What we're doing at Moms First, saying whoever's elected president, whoever's going to be elected in Congress, you need to commit to your first 100 days that you're going to support and pass paid leave and childcare.
I mean, it seems to me like it could be a total bipartisan.
It is. There's 85% of Republicans support this. This is not a partisan issue. It's simply just like this is where it comes down to. Moms are so damn tired, right? So like we're not marching for these issues. We're also in a moment of protecting our children from not getting shot.
Totally.
From our environment going to shit, right? It's like there's so many other things so we don't put ourselves first. The second thing is like young people is so far out. Like when the climate got done because young people said, nope, this is my environment. This is my earth. I need you to do something about it. It's really hard to actually pass policies without the youth voice. And so part of what we think about Moms First is how do I get people fired up about this issue that don't have kids yet? And so this is like a really important thing of like getting that voice to be part of this fight.
Amazing. Yeah, guys, I mean, I hear a lot about, the U.S. doesn't have paid family leave. And I'm like, then go make it.
Yeah.
Like, go create it. That's the beautiful thing about this country is that if you don't like something, you can go do something about that. And that's not the case everywhere in the world, or at least it's not as accessible. The U.S. is very open to innovation and change. Just complaining about it is just the first step for taking. You gotta go find solutions and create solutions like PaidLeave.ai. excellent idea, like a beautiful idea. Take the bureaucracy and simplify it. Love it. So the last thing that I like to do here is co-author a bit of advice.
Okay.
So we had a viewer or listener write in a conundrum, and oh my goodness, this is all over my DMs lately.
Oh my God, this is like my dream to have like a show answering people's advice. Go for it.
Well, we'll start that on the side. You can come back next time. Okay, so this, I'm pregnant and interviewing. I'm pregnant, need to tell my boss. Such a common question that I get, and I'm curious. So Julie from New Mexico says, Dear Erin and Reshma, I just got offered my dream job and want to accept it, but I'm 7 months pregnant. The job is remote and all my interviews have been over Zoom. I didn't tell them and now I feel bad about it. I'm going to need to go on maternity leave in a couple months and I'm freaking out about how to bring it up. I fear they're going to be mad I didn't bring it up during the interview process. Help.
So she have to tell him before she accepts the job?
I think she's in between. Yeah, they just offered it to her. She's 7 months pregnant, so she's pretty pregnant. And now she's trying to figure out, like, do I tell them before accepting it, I think. Yeah, that's tough.
What do you think?
Well, my first thought with this is always, and I get like 30, 50 of these a week. My first thought is it sucks.
That you have to hide it.
It sucks you have to hide it, and it sucks that guys don't have to deal with this.
Yeah.
There's a guy who impregnated her, and he's not having to deal with the stress.
No.
And that makes me angry. Guys that their coworkers don't even know when they're having a kid.
And they're not crazy for hiding because we know we'll get taken. We know we'll get something taken away from us. Right? The minute we tell. So there's a piece.
And the offer can be rescinded.
That's
not illegal, is it? Or maybe it could be.
Well, the problem is I get a lot of messages from women who were on maternity leave and got fired all the time. And there's no legal protection around that.
Yeah, that's crazy. Other countries, there's so much. You cannot fire a pregnant woman.
Yeah. So to me, in some ways, part of like the revolution is like, don't tell them. Take the job.
Take the maternity leave.
Like,
what are you talking about?
Right.
You're pregnant.
Because
what are you talking about?
if they're the kind of people that, so they're the kind of people who are going to fire you, they're going to fire you.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could take that route if it's a remote job and you can still get your job done. And you have reviewed the maternity leave policy and they have one because you're going to need that. I even made a video once on like how to sneakily ask about maternity leave policies, which is silly because
and
straight up ask.
Well, exactly. And all the men that are listening, just ask for the maternity policy. Like we have to just make it par for course that it's
everybody
like
asks.
Everybody asks. Yeah. Everybody asks. And it's not like a signal that you don't really care about like working here. You're not going to be productive. Look, this whole thing needs to change, right? We need to like the best possible world is like for me, people like, I love hiring pregnant women.
I love that.
So like, no one hides it from us. And I have often at times given an offer to someone who's 7 months pregnant, I think twice, once for sure. And she came and worked for a couple of weeks. She took her leave and she came back and she was amazing. She worked for us for like 5 years. So it's like when someone is great, like you're like, all right, like I want you, you're gonna be so extraordinary. And we gotta get to that place.
Yeah. It's funny with my content, I'm always straddling this line between the way things should be and the way things are. So I give advice on the way things are, but then I always sprinkle in like, and it should be this way. So like for this example, the ugly reality is that they may be a terrible employer and they might see you 7 months pregnant and think, ooh, did we make the wrong decision here?
And you might want to, so then that was the flip side, right? And you might want to know that before. So you might want to know before you accept the offer, like, how are they going to handle this? I just want you to know I'm 7 months pregnant. And then and if they don't give you the offer, they were never the kind of employer that you wanted to work for. And they probably, if they're going to do that, could fire you while you're on maternity leave because there's no protection against that.
Insane. It's tough. Again, women have to deal with that, but yet the guy who created that baby with her does not need to have that conversation.
Yeah. And I think the thing is like for the movement perspective is what's the behavior you want people to do to change the culture? And I think that it is almost like not hiding it.
Yeah. Loud and proud.
Loud and proud.
Man. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Where can people connect with you and follow you?
So you can connect with me on Instagram or on LinkedIn at Reshma Saujani, and you can connect with MomsFirst at momsfirst.us.
Cool. And yeah, go visit MomsFirst. They have some great resources. Their Instagram account is great. Follow Reshma on Instagram and TikTok.
Yes.
You're on TikTok too.
Oh, yes, I am.
Gosh, thank you so much. This is a great conversation. I feel like I could talk to you for hours, but you are a very busy woman, so I'm going to let you go.
Thank you for having me.